Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
Boom, boom, boom. We are back with another exciting episode of Find Your Freedom. And this is going to be a good one. Can't wait to introduce our next guest friend here to the show. But before then, we have a freedom kit for you. Is absolutely free, easily downloadable. All you have to do is go to www.findyourfreedomrei.com/freedom kit. Once again, www.findyourfreedomrei.com/freedom kit. Now, our next guest here, is cool because when you look at her Instagram handle, right, I really enjoy kind of the words that she used. She says, I'm a mama and I'm a wifey. Like, I thought that was pretty cool. I'm like, you know what? I can't wait until she gets on this episode. Obviously has a nursing, background, BSN, RN as well. And, we're going to get into her unique story, but I got to blow this up, because this is kind of like the big thing. Like she's calmly saying, "Oh yeah, I got one single family property that grows over $40,000 a month." Like she says those things like it's an everyday thing, and we gonna get into that. But until then, hey, how you doing? How you feeling?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me here. Really.
Awesome. Hey, we super excited to have you. We know that you're going to sit here and inspire so many people to just do better, and we're happy about that. So, before we do anything, if you could, for the listeners, just give a little background on yourself.
Yeah, of course. Well, my name is Pheigh, and first of all, I guess let's go like from my background. I was born and raised in the Philippines. I moved here as an adult, so I moved here when I was 21 years old. I was already done with college, and as usual, like all Filipinos that come here, most of them become a nurse. So I am one of those poster child. um, so I moved here and I started working, and I guess I'm a mom of two little toddlers. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm a wife, of course, and I guess what I do is I run an assisted living facility for seniors. So I provide senior housing, and still do my day job as a registered nurse, and I specialize in hospice care.
Wow. Okay. So, you came here when you're 21. Your mom, nurse, and hospice. I think hospice is really interesting because it's a part of somebody's life where it's kind of like, I don't want to say it, like you're closing the chapter. So you get insight into maybe seeing people in a different light. I guess before we
hmm
even get started into like the real estate stuff, like share maybe like some lessons learned of just like being around kind of that environment, or even like patience.
Yeah. Well, I actually have been doing hospice for past 10 years, and it's something that I really am very passionate about, and I love. It's not for everyone, but I love that I get to relate to families and be there to hold their hand through probably the toughest time of their lives as a family. And it had changed my perspective about life as well. It's like I see the people or the patients that I have with regrets or things that they have not done yet. Or I have also, seen the other portion of it where people are just so happy with what they have accomplished. And sometimes I get to ask them the questions of like, what are the things that you did in life that got you to this point? Or what are the things that you would advise to a young person kind of just fulfilling or finding this American dream and what are the things that you can advise me as a young person? I mean, I don't get to have that conversation with a lot of my patients, but for the few that I get to do that, I try to ask those questions. And I think it helps me to have like that perspective of, you know what, there's more in life. I should be grateful for what I have, and I should do more, not just for myself, but the people around me. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. So I guess from a nursing perspective, I guess tell us a little more about that. Like what got you into nursing?
Um, well, it's kind of like a pushed thing. I guess growing up in the Philippines, that's like everyone goes to nursing school. I mean, I don't know about everyone, but at least for the circle that I'm in, a lot. My mom was a nurse. My sister is a nurse. All my cousins are nurses, and that's what we felt like we're in this industry, service industry, and that's what's gonna get us out of the country to do bigger
Mm.
things. Um, and so my mom said, "Okay, well, you have no choice. You're going to nursing school." And that's what I did. And I felt like at first I would hate it. I get dizzy when they take blood out of me. So I was like, how do I do nursing school with this is how I feel? But I overcame that and, love that industry.
So Faye, every just the little that we've had discussions, like I feel that you are such a caring person. Just the way you kind of describe your relationship with patients. And I kind of want to touch on that a little bit on the perspective piece because you get a lot of insight where I think people have to go through really tough hardships in order for them to learn a lesson, and you're able to get access to um, people's hardships, their regrets, um, their reflections off of their life. How's that? I know you talked about how it's important with family, but how has that kind of kept you grounded or shaped kind of where you put your time as you prioritize your general day?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, being a part of that every day as my day job, it has been such a rewarding thing. And not everyone gets
Mm.
that opportunity to help the people at their end of their lives. And so I've learned a lot about myself in the process too. And that I'm really also grateful for having that opportunity to uh, change people's lives, even just for a little time, because sometimes I'm just with them for a month or 2 months. Um, but you know, it it really developed my grit and my resilience and that mindset of like, oh, if I get this hurdle, I'll give up, or probably not for me. I think I have, because of all of the experiences that I've had with my patients and hearing their stories and kind of going through hardships of each family that I take care of, it just nothing seems so hard for me, and I just thinking, oh, I'll just wing it. I'll figure it out as I go.
I can appreciate that. And one, you're giving your time and you're being genuine with these patients, and a lot of these patients sometimes don't have family members. I'm sure.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're just really put into a position of needing someone to be there to just talk to them and care for them, and you sit there and you spend your time to listen to their stories, and hearing their stories is shaping your life, right?
Yeah,
You're using
yeah.
their experience to fuel some things going on in your life. I guess, do you have anything you can share where, you heard a story or two and you was able to pull from that story that got you through some type of challenge in your life?
There are a lot of stories, but maybe like one story that I wouldn't forget is there's a younger patient that I had who's going through cancer and has little kids.
Mm.
Like maybe she was in her 30s. I was still in my 20s when I was working with that client. And so just seeing how like she's worried about the future for her kids and it's harder for her to let go, and there's a lot of emotional pain aside from the physical pain that she was going through. It was really hard to see that as a woman. I wasn't a mother yet, but I've always had that thought of when I do have my kids, like I want to make sure that I get to spend the time with them. I get to, make memories with them versus going to work like and doing my 9 to 5 and only spending, the evenings or the weekends with them. And so when I had my first child and I had to go back to work, um, my first thought was like, how does everyone do this? Like, I know everyone's saying like it's normal, you'll get used to it afterwards. You'll get used to leaving your baby that was still very dependent on me for like milk and for all the needs that this little baby has. And for me, my thought was, well, I don't think I can like do this another time because I would want to have more children. And I'm thinking, well, let me find a different way of doing things, still keeping my nursing job and maybe researching like what are the things that people do to be wealthy in America. And it's real estate. So I kind of just tried to put both of them together, and going to homes like as a hospice nurse, I had this thought of like, well, why don't I just put my nursing background and, I'm starting to be passionate with real estate and thinking that this is going to give me the freedom and put them together and, create a space where I can still have that passion of caring for others, but also caring for my family, myself, and finding that freedom of time.
I think like transitioning that story of how like it's so important to spend time with your family and creating memories and being intentional with, okay, um, looking into, real estate and how can that be leveraged so that you can put yourself in a position to do that. And then merging your skills with real estate, which again, that's awesome. So like assisted living, explain that to me because I think there's not a lot of people that are familiar with that. I know there's a TikTok and it went viral because of like numbers that were shared, but I think what
Yeah.
what I'm more interested in is more just like explain what it is and like how you get them. I guess like somebody who's coming off the streets, how would they get involved in something like that? Let's say they're Pheigh, they love people, they want to care, and then they want to create like a safe space. So how would you do that?
Yeah. So the assisted living that I have, there's different types, but the one that I have is more of like a residential assisted living where I can speak for California. We house 6 patients in the home, and there would be caregivers in the home caring for them 24/7. Um, the way, I guess, in a nutshell, to go about it is you have to get your administrator license. And with that, you would have to take a class, take an exam. So once you get that license, you can find a home that's suitable for the care that you will be providing. Like ideally, it's a single-story home with multiple rooms. Um, if there are steps, you have to create like ramps and all that for it to be semi-ADA compliant. Um, and then you kind of just have to go through the licensing process through Department of Social Services. And then from there, you can open up your home, market yourself to the community around you to get patients in the home, and then you go from there. That's kind of like the very, very short version of it.
Yeah, and you laid that out very in an elegant way. So we definitely appreciate that. And I think that, sometimes when, you hear numbers, right? And I think one of the big things, like Omid was mentioning, the $40,000 a month, right? I guess, can we put some let's kind of bring that down some, if we could, like, if you don't mind, do you mind sharing kind of like the numbers of, kind of, what the gross and,
Yeah,
what the payouts are, and roughly what the net revenue would be roughly?
sure. So yes, the gross is about 40,000 a month. Um, and you could go either way. You could do private pay, or you can have like the government or Medi-Cal to pay for the housing. Currently, I'm doing private pay, so that's about 40,000 gross. And I would say like payroll, and all those expenses would be about conservatively like 60% of that, and then plus the PITI. So it's kind of like, I guess, multifamily. When you're syndicating, your profit margins are about 25%, you know? So 25% of 40,000 is the profit. But that also entails a lot more work. And that's why I say it's not for everyone, because there's a lot more headache as compared to short-term rentals, where you could still net 10,000 a month, um, with lesser headaches. It's more automated, and you're not having all that liability. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
those are
so
the
I
numbers.
yeah, so I think that's interesting, right? Like it's you talk about a model where it's you can do up to six, and then let's say in California, but let's say there's other places where maybe there's other states, there's less regulation, or you can scale with like a larger property and
Mm-hmm.
economies of scale. And I know often there's these discussions about, okay, like the cash flow, but I think you bring up a great point. That's cash flow at the expense of what? Because there's opportunity cost with time and stress
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess from a staffing standpoint, what are like some of the challenges? I guess just running a business like that.
Yeah. So staffing is definitely, I think, is for me the hardest part of it, because they're the heart of this business. I'm not the one who's providing care to these residents 24/7. So you really got to make sure that you're finding the right people to do it. Um, you know, and I think caregiving is the hardest job that anyone could ever do. And so staffing is definitely, I mean, there's probably an abundance of them, as long as you're paying the right amount, but finding the right people with a heart of like doing this and doing this every day, and that's, I think that's the hardest portion of it, is finding the best person who's fit to take care of the residents that you're putting in your home.
And
And so I actually opened during COVID. So I
oh,
was I was 8 months pregnant with my second
Whoa.
child, and it was in the middle of COVID. So April April is when we got our license, and I didn't market and fix the home until June 1st, 2020 is when I first got my resident, and I was giving birth July.
wow.
And
Wow.
so, I had to go through finding the right staff, training these staff members, and taking care of the family, making sure that they feel safe, they feel comfortable leaving their mom or their dad in that home. Um, so that was a very challenging time too, opening up the business.
Wow.
And yeah.
Yeah. Well, walk us through that a little bit. I mean, um, I can only imagine you're um having the baby, and it's COVID, right? Which is during a time where I think maybe we weren't too educated on it as a country quite yet. um and you are around people, interviewing people, during this time. Did you have help, like, did you have your husband or anyone else who was helping out, maybe watching the kids or help you during an interview? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, so I'm lucky to have a very supportive husband. So my husband was still working at that time, but once we had opened Nurturehood or the assisted living, he had stopped working so he can be with the kids, um, and kind of have that little bubble or circle. So we're not going out because we have kids to take care of. I was pregnant. We have seniors to take care of, and it was just a lot of risk for everyone. So he was very supportive, and I give props to my husband for me to be able to do all the things that I'm doing. And that he wasn't prideful of like, oh, I want to be the breadwinner of this family and go to work, and provide. But he was humble enough to say like, okay, I believe in your goals. I believe in you know, your dreams. And so I'll be here for you. I'll support you. And also my mom. I'm lucky to have my mom and my sisters here too, so I'm able to drop off my son. And when I gave birth, I'm able to have that help as well. Because if I didn't have them, I probably wouldn't. Even if I had the grit, I would probably be like, "This isn't the right time." I probably will just put everything on pause. So
So let's kind of transition a little bit. So okay, so you're running this, and then there's you seem to be doing research on real estate. So how do you come across like other niches and or decide maybe I'm going to test some other type of real estate out, and so like walk us through that whole process.
yeah. So I guess going back to your question too earlier of staffing, I was going to open another one like the year after, but we're still kind of in that midst of COVID. And I knew that it was challenging even for like, other industries to have people go to work and show up. And I didn't want to open another facility wherein this is a 24/7 job. I am caring for people. I would have to work and be there and be the caregiver. And for me, it was important to be intentional about that and to protect my time with my kids and my family. So I had to pivot into short-term rentals instead. So that's how we were actually under contract for another facility. And during escrow, I was already asking myself, like, are you sure this something that you should do at this point? Like maybe the timing isn't right. And I was just true to myself. Like if I said probably we could do this another time, we could put it on pause. The assisted living is great, but you have to protect your time. And if meaning I could just cancel this and like tell them that we're not going to go through it. And so that's what I did. We just even I said, oh, okay, we're not going to move forward with this deal, and I just pivoted into short-term rentals. So I did, which I opened a short-term rental out in Joshua Tree and in Coachella. So that kind of took my time in building that. And then at the same time, after I was able to stabilize the short-term rentals that I have, I wanted to move my family into a better location because at that time we house hacked the first home. So the assisted living, we had house hacked that and we moved out of the home once we got our first resident. And so we had to rent out an apartment. And after like a year and a half, I was like, I think our family's ready to get out of this tiny apartment and maybe give them, a backyard where they can play because my kids were getting at that age where they need some space. Um, so short-term rentals, and then kind of pivoted into doing another house hack just for the goal of, oh, I can rent out different parts of the house and provide a better space for my family. So that's where we're at right now.
That's great. So let me ask you a question because, like the way that we gain in life is something have to be sacrificed, right? And
Mhm.
you decided to do some house hacking, which put you and your family in a smaller, environment, right? And for I think you mentioned maybe a year and a half or so. So
Mhm.
during that time of sacrifice of doing the house hacking, what did that allow you to do? In terms of, did it allow you to put down less money on that property that you were in terms of it allow you to save more money to invest into future properties, or like what did that sacrifice allow you to kind of spring off and do?
Yeah. So it was definitely a sacrifice, being in a smaller space, but it did allow me to like save and reinvest all that money for another property, which I was able to purchase the short-term rentals. And it did allow me to save for this other house hack. Um, and by, I guess in those 2 years, I was able to buy three properties, which is slow for most people, but for I guess for my perspective, it was able to, house hacking allowed me to save and kind of move up. It's always not, it's like it's a base hit. I'm able to move forward in little steps. Um, and then from here, I'm hoping to move forward, move out of the house and buy, a better space for the children, and for the family.
So can you explain the house hack for like listeners who aren't as familiar with house hacking? So like, what are like the typical timelines for house hacking? Is there different like loan terms? Um, and then like how can you leverage that strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And so for myself, since I am living in the home, I was able to put 5% down instead of, the traditional 10 or 20% down for an investment. So I was able to put less money down, um, and allowed me to be able to leverage, private investors too, for at least this is for my assisted living. Even without knowing what private money is, private investors, I was able to leverage the relationships that I had and for them to lend me some money for renovations, with a very little interest rate. Um, and so let's just say for the house hack, the first house hack that I did, I bought the house, at 765,000 with a 3.5% down actually, but it's not an FHA, and was able to use private money for the renovations, of the home to be able to make it into an assisted living facility. And mine, I guess, is not a traditional house hack. It's because usually you would either rent out a space of your home, create a wall, but I rented it out by room and created a business around it.
No, that it's very traditional. so I think that's the sometimes the narrative go out there of saying, oh, you need a multifamily home to do house hacking, and that's just not true, right? If the laws in your development or where you live, your township, allow you to rent out rooms, that is a form of house hacking, as well. And I just want to make sure that the listeners really understand that the power of house hacking and the power of what it allow people to do, and from the very low down payment that you're able to put onto the property, the initial purchase, as well as obviously the mortgage and the insurance and the taxes, and having additional revenue coming in to pay that, so you can take the money that you're making, if that's from your W-2 or in the other property, and save it, or like you mentioned, take all that money and reinvest it into other properties. And I just really love that, and I'm happy that you're sharing that story, because I would like for so many other people to sit there and understand the power of, hey, take a little sacrifice, put yourself in a smaller, you know, a spot, which you did it in a year and a half, which is nothing, right? It seems like it's a long time in that year and a half, though. But and when you look at things, a year and a half is not. So, tell me a little more about kind of your relationship and with your husband. Now, is he in the business as well, or is he still doing what he was doing already?
Yeah, so my husband is still in the business.
Mm.
He's been like my all-around person. He's like my VA. He's like my handyman. And he's like the person who's going to take care of the kids. Like right now, my husband is with the kids because school's over when I have to do things like this. And so I'm really, really grateful for that guy, and I feel like I don't give enough props for him.
All right, let's give him a shout
For
out. Shout out to the husband. I'm not sure
Yeah,
his
shout
name,
out
but
to
give him a shout out right
Hero.
now.
Go Hugh.
And so I mean, since we're being all candid, I mean it's been challenging too to have kind of that merge together where, oh, sometimes he feels like I'm his boss and then I'm his wife and I'm the baby mama, and that that could be very challenging. I guess especially for, I don't know, for men, sometimes that kind of hurts your ego, but he's been such a trooper to just really support me in this journey. Um, and having the two kids, having two toddlers, like they're the priority. Like husband comes last, or the relationship comes last. And that, we're going through those struggles right now. Like, how do we balance this whole thing? How do we not talk about work when we're just sitting on the couch and we're supposed to be just relaxing or just being together? Um, so those are challenges that we're facing right now, and what we try to do is to, make time to have these little dates, and try to schedule dates if we can schedule the dates and drop off the kids. Or even sometimes, like yesterday, we dropped off the kids to my mom's house and we were gonna go to Costco. And we said, maybe we can have a little lunch date since it's just the two of us. So we go get sushi and then we go to Costco and just
I love that.
condense the time that we were supposed to just go shopping. So yeah, we try to do those things, but at the same time, it's still a challenge with the business, with the kids.
So everything that you're talking about are like very common struggles, right? It's like, how do you balance everything when you're trying to build a business, when you want to take care of the family, when there's so many things being thrown at you, and then you can't turn it off. Like, it's like, when you're an entrepreneur, there's no like, okay, I'm gonna turn it off today. Like, something's gonna get thrown at you, especially if you're doing assisted, short term,
Hmm.
different type of real estate. Um, but I think you should definitely also, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. There's not very many people, one, that go into like the nursing space, decide, hey, I'm going to run my own facility. That's hard in itself, right? And then two, you have young kids, which nobody wants to do that when they have young kids, because that's a
Yeah.
beast in itself, right? That's like
Yes.
a job and a half by itself.
Two kids.
And then you're like, oh, you know what? I only bought three properties in the past year. I'm like, nobody, like very few people even
Yes.
buy more than one property. So like, you
Yes.
got to give yourself a lot of credit. I think you guys are, and of course it's all the struggles that come with entrepreneurship, which is, um, sometimes at the detriment of the relationship of the husband and wife, sometimes as you're trying to work through things. But I think that's very normal, and that's like the typical roller coaster. What would you say to somebody, um like I guess my question would be, hey, like, you're this nurse, how did you learn all these things? Like, where do I learn all this stuff, and how did you decide, hey, I'm gonna do short-term rentals, and I'm gonna run an assisted living, and I'm gonna, you have all these ventures. Where's the time, and how do I incorporate it, and how do I do it? So I would say, like, you're talking to the next nurse or the next person that wants to be you. What do they do?
I think the best thing really is to educate yourself, of course, number one. And if you're not a reader, you don't like to be reading books anymore because you've read so many books when you were in college or whatnot, podcasts or um, podcasts, it really is one of the best places that I go to and get the information and then kind of just do research from there. But number one is educate yourself. Give yourself all the tools that you would need to get yourself to the next step. Aside from that, surrounding yourself with the right people is very important. I have gone to a lot of meetups. Tried to do it. It's not for me. Going to a meetup is not to give myself that recognition, but to learn from a lot of the people that are there and being around people who has the same mindset, having that mindset of we're just gonna do it regardless of whatever struggles we have in life, regardless of whatever excuses that we have. All of these people that you meet at these meetups kind of just makes you want to be a better person. um,
Mhm.
and also like joining webinars or like Facebook groups, even if you're just reading through the comments there, I think that's a good start on where to find information and to connect with people. But the most important step is to actually do things and take action. Yeah. So without taking action, regardless of how many meetups you go to, regardless of how many podcasts or books that you read, and if you don't take action and just take that leap and be comfortable of taking a risk, then you won't get to wherever you want to go.
That's amazing. That's just absolutely amazing. The thing I like to sit there and say is there's the three C's and the three A's that people need to follow, right? And the first three C's is clear, 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 and then three A's is action, 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 right? So you get clear on what you want to do and you take action to it. And truth be told is, you talk about educating yourself, right? So I'm gonna give you a little story about how Omid and I met, right? It met because both of us decided to educate ourselves. So there was a 4-day event, out in the LA area. I flew from the East Coast, me went, and that's where we met. Right. So that's step one. We met because both of us made a decision to educate ourselves. Step two, Omid and a couple other people decided to put together a monthly meetup, right? Virtually. And they invited me, obviously, and that's where the relationship got built. By coming on, I used to come on maybe like 10 minutes beforehand. I get some behind the scenes talking with these guys, and we was able to sit there and build a relationship that way. And Omi lives in California. I live in Philadelphia. We are totally different time zones and totally different coasts. And I'm saying these things to the listeners because nothing should stop you. And Omi and I has a great relationship. We're building businesses together, you know, all because we made a decision to sit there and get educated, just like you mentioned. And then we made a decision to sit there and make sure that we nurture that relationship by meeting every month. And then we took action on a few other things. One other thing I want to add is we live in a microwavable country or maybe state or world, meaning that everybody want the fruit from their labor, today, right? And or tomorrow, I should sit there and say. And I have to say that the ROI for me from that event, cost me over $4,000 to go, kind of total with everything. The ROI paid 2 years later. Right, 2 years later is when I've seen the ROI and off the chain numbers, just to sit there and say that. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that information, because people really truly need to know that's exactly what you need to do. But I have a question for you. What does find your freedom mean to you?
Find your freedom. For me, freedom is having the freedom of time to do what I want to do with my kids, to be able to travel, to be able to just say, well, today I guess I'm just hanging out at a coffee shop and want to read a book or listen to a podcast. And having that freedom to share what I built or be there for my friends, be there for my family, whenever, wherever.
That's beautiful. No,
think.
that's great. And I think you are doing that, and even for your patients and for your guests, and so I feel like you're servicing so many people in different communities. So that's really awesome. So let's say I'm somebody that's listening to this podcast. I want to connect with you. I want to see, like, how do I meet Pheigh? Like, she seems so cool. Like, so if you're not at one of your short-term rentals, or I think you're in the Bay Area, where do people find you?
Well, people can find me on Instagram, which I still have to work on, but my Instagram handle is Invest with Pheigh. You can reach out to me there, send me a DM. I'm mostly a call me person. Like, I'm not very good. I don't like being on my phone. I'm the worst texter. I would just not respond at some point when I'm doing something different. But yeah, you can find me, Invest with Pheigh. Or if you're in the Bay Area, I go to a lot of the meetups that usually, like Josh, Austin, and all these other people in the Bay that hold a lot of great meetups. You'll find me there.
That's awesome. And I love the old school, right? Because I'm not gonna lie, I walked up, so I was at an event and I'm like, oh, we talked for a little bit, and I'm like, oh, let's change numbers. They're like, oh no, here's my Instagram handle. I was like, oh, this is how we connect now. I thought that I was supposed to give you my telephone number, you give me yours, and we connect, that way. So I love the old school thing. You pick up the phone, you sit there, say, hey, how you doing? How are you? Right? And you talk
Yeah.
that thing through. So I'm with you, honestly speaking.
Yeah.
So we're coming to an end to the show, and what we like to do is we like to have this big boom session, right? Where we want to sit there and say boom as loud as we can, and we want to sit there and wreck some speakers out there. All right. So I'm gonna count to three, 1, 2, 3, and in a uniform manner, all of us gonna say boom as loud as we can. Y'all ready?
Okay.
Oh man, listeners, you better be ready. Turn your sound down, your volume down now. All right. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Boom! Awesome. Check this out. We just had an amazing show here. And one of the things that I really want you to focus in on is just the entire story, just how there were things going through her life, people she's sitting in, and these stories allowed her to get through some challenges, as well as the interaction from her family members to her husband, and knowing that everything is not going to always be perfect, but you can sit there and take action every day and you will get there. Now, make sure you listen to this episode and leave us a 5-star review, because this is how we're able to bring you more and more episodes like this. And don't forget to share this. Share this with your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle. Hey, share it with all your coworkers, the ones you like and the ones you don't like. Until the next episode of Find Your Freedom, we talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.